Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Entrepreneur Encounters. I'm excited to have you here, and thanks for joining us. You're going to love the show we put together today. Chad Johnson is an amazing entrepreneur. He's an amazing man, and I think you're going to get a lot out of his story about how he takes what he gets passed to him every day and figures out how to make it better. If this is your first time joining us on Entrepreneur Encounters, welcome. We've made it to episode 10. I'm super excited about that. Thank you for everyone who supported us along the way. This is a long-form interview format where we meet with in-process entrepreneurs who are on the journey just like you are. And our goal is that you learn from their successes, you learn from their experience, and frankly, I think you're going to learn a lot from their struggles as well. So with that, I want to go ahead and bring Chad Johnson onto the show. Chad, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks a lot for having me, Brent. Appreciate it.
Awesome. Why don't we go ahead and jump in? Tell us about yourself and tell us about your business a little.
Yeah, so I'm currently the founder and CEO of ScRxipt. ScRxipt is a payment platform that allows you to send and or receive funds to individuals who have difficulty paying for their out-of-pocket expenses for medications or medical expenses on their own. So yeah, I've been at this almost going on 2 years since the idea actually was initiated in November of 2019. And so yeah, come a long way and still have a long way to go. But excited for the opportunity to share a lot more about the journey of what brought us here.
Awesome. And we'll get into ScRxipt in more detail a little bit later in the show. But first, why did you want to become an entrepreneur? What gave you that urge or that necessity to get into it?
Yeah, it's funny. So I remember being an undergrad in college, and I remember saying, I'm not sure where the epiphany came from, but I said, I'm going to retire from a 9 to 5 by the time I'm 30 and have my own establishment, right? And I just kept repeating that with my friends, and I had no clue what I would be doing, but I just knew that I would, not be in corporate America or a 9 to 5, but kind of really have my own enterprise and establishment. And so it's something that I knew. Looking back, it's kind of like discernment. I thought it was just kind of my driving wheel, but looking back at the journey, it was just discernment preparing me for what was ahead. Little did I know what I'd have to endure. It's romanticized. You think about being your own boss, being an entrepreneur. I don't work a 9 to 5, and you're like, sometimes that 9 to 5 transactional environment is better than working a 9 to 9, right? 12-hour days, long nights, income, no income, right? That's the stuff you don't think about. But I kind of knew that in undergrad and college that that transition would happen for me in life. Even going back earlier in childhood wasn't necessarily entrepreneurship, but ironically, I played football, played sports, but I literally played office. When I would get back to my room, I would set up like my TV, the old tube TV on a rolling cart, and I'd like set pens and paper up on there, and I'd like pretend I was in the office administering things. And so that was kind of a part of my fabric since I was a child.
I love that. Walk us through a little bit of that journey when you got started into your first business, because you've done a couple of ventures, and so we want to hear about that and what passion in you kind of drove you in those directions.
Yeah, so for me, the first transition for me into entrepreneurship, so I did make that transition by the time I was 30. It didn't happen how I expected. I was at Aurora Healthcare, so corporate America. Worked my backgrounds, human resources, organizational development, business, and I kind of really got this spiritual kind of leading to leave my career, and it did not make sense. So this is back in 2008, where I've got a wife and 2 children, young children at that time. I've got a 8-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. I'm like, I can't leave my career. I'm like, I've got kids at home. I got a wife at home. Like, I don't have anything lined up. And so after a year of really fighting, I kind of finally surrendered and said, all right, I think I'm going to follow this spiritual leading. And I left my career in February of 2009 and still didn't know exactly what I was going to be doing. I had completed the ACRE program, commercial real estate program here in Milwaukee. So wasn't going to go directly into the real estate market, but learned a lot, made a lot of connections. But I became involved with a digital media and telecommunications company. So that was like one of the first companies I was able to be a partner in. So I started 100% commission, which was different, to go from a salary to no salary, no income, and it's 100% commission. But I ended up being a part of the company and saw that there was an opportunity for us to potentially deploy digital signage and Wi-Fi on Milwaukee County Transit System buses. And I'm like, wow, this could be a major opportunity here. So I found someone who's still been a business mentor for me until this day, to give me investment capital to buy shares in an S Corp so I could be a partner in the company. And that was like my first entry into, okay, buying shares in an S Corp, now I'm a partner. All right, now I'm responsible for helping to grow the business. So I didn't start it, but I was able to kind of come on board and, was successful in being able to get an RFP created by the Milwaukee County Transit System. But we were unsuccessful in coming to terms with, getting the screens deployed. We couldn't come to an agreement on revenue between us and them. And so that was like my first entry in, not so much of a failed mission, but I learned something, right? It didn't occur as I anticipated, but I took a risk. And that individual who gave me investment capital to be a partner shared something with me. He said, most people think we invest in businesses. He said, I invested in you. And so that was a kind of a shift for me in my thinking, like, you invested in me. Yeah, no, you saw a dollar sign. He's like, no, we invested in you. And so for me, that was kind of that paradigm shift that says, wow, okay, well, yeah, even though it didn't happen as we anticipated, he still was saying, I invested in you, and I think you're going to do something amazing. And so we've stayed in contact since that point. So, after that business, I kind of transitioned and exited that, got my investment capital back, didn't make anything, but, we got the capital back. And so after that, I ended up being reached out to be a independent training consultant. And so that was like, the first thing I started on my own. I started an LLC and operated as an independent training consultant in leadership development for companies like Johnson Controls, Molson Coors, and Fiserv. And I wasn't looking for it, and I didn't know it existed the way that I did it. Someone reached out to me, a relationship, and said, we've got this training I think you'd be good for, your facilitation skills, your background and knowledge. We'd certify you in this, and then we send you around the country, US and Canada, facilitating for leadership staff. And I jumped on board, and from there, I kind of picked up certifications along the way. So got certified with their content. Then I picked up situational leadership from Blanchard and emergenetics and development dimensions, DDI content, and then picked up Fiserv and Molson Coors. And I did that for over 8 years now as an independent facilitator and training consultant. Didn't work for an agency or anyone, just working independently. And so that gave me kind of the flexibility as well as capital to stay entrepreneurial. And so after that training consulting kind of really took off, I ended up partnering with one of my former neighbors in a coffee company called Making Coffee. And so it was really an opportunity where it was in response to really social impact and the need to do job creation. And Eric Resch, the founder of Stone Creek Coffee, provided an opportunity that says, hey, we don't really know Central City issues, but we know coffee. And we think coffee could be a way to really create impact. And if there's anybody interested in partnering with us, we'd help to show you the ropes, maybe teach you how to roast coffee and create jobs. And so Jared Cronk and myself partnered. He's the owner of Shell House Goods, kind of an online consignment company with Amazon. And he did a lot of job creation with high school students and others. And we partnered to create Making Coffee, a social impact coffee brand that exists to this day. And, we've been able to put, high school students to work, and individuals who have difficulty finding employment have had opportunities to kind of work with us with events and learning fulfillment and business and marketing. And so that's been kind of a great opportunity for me to really do social impact and, really connect with a lot of folks across this great city of Milwaukee, and be a partner and an advisor in it now to really kind of create job opportunities for high school students. And so that's kind of, been my path since I left corporate America, being a partner in a company that I didn't create, but learning how to get investment capital. And it didn't work as we thought, but you kind of learn your lessons from that. Being a training consultant independently and facilitating, my gift of speaking and training really was monetized, and, was really able to take care of my family. And then moving on to the coffee brand, that exists to this day has been beneficial. So that was kind of my journey of entrepreneurship, really just being in position, networking, people reaching out to me regarding opportunities. taking advantage of it, learning a lot about what to do and what not to do, tons of mistakes. But at the same time, you're better for it as a result. And here we are today with ScRxipt. It's something that my mother got in the vision over 25 years ago. She feels God gave her the inspiration for ScRxipt, where she read articles about seniors that were eating cat food because they couldn't afford living expenses and their medications. And so fast forward 25 years later, we're still in that same predicament where folks are having difficulty paying for prescription medication expenses as well as living expenses. And so after she shared that with me, and she herself went through an experience where her employer, Briggs and Stratton, filed for bankruptcy, and she lost her retiree insurance and her pension is in jeopardy. She was having difficulty paying for meds, and her expenses went from $20 to over $400 out of pocket for the same medication. And she's like, something's got to be done about this. And that's where she shared ScRxipt. She said, hey, God gave me the name ScRxipt 25 years ago. And I'm like, well, what the heck is ScRxipt? And that's where she's like, Chad, that's where you guys come in. You figure it out. And so I've been figuring it out since November of 2019 of, well, what can ScRxipt be? How can we really create impact for individuals like my mother to really assist them with kind of really life needed finances to take care of, medical expenses and prescriptions so they can live well. So yeah, it's been an interesting journey getting to this point. I'm a non-technical founder. So, I don't do coding, and that's where you fill your gaps with people who know more than you or who have that skill set, but I've got the vision, I've got the connections and the network to bring it to fruition, and looking forward to sharing a little bit more about that journey and what I've learned, and even so much more that has to be done.
Awesome, Chad. That's a long path that went along. I love how it started with a holy discontent, by the way. That's the phrase I would use there, that spiritual discomfort. I'm sure everyone's got a different name for it, but you had several transitions along the way, and I want to stop and I want to ask you to pick some of those apart, because I feel like for a lot of entrepreneurs, you hear these stories and it sounds a little bit like Chad woke up one day and he was like, bam, I'm doing coffee. Woke up the next day and he's like, bam, I'm going to do training. Bam, I'm going to do ScRxipt. And there was so much, but I want to focus really on those transitions, because I got to imagine the conversations with your wife with two younger kids, that's got to be a tough one. Probably your family's weighing in like, Chad, you got a nice job. Like, what are you thinking about? And similar maybe when you're thinking about the coffee, and similar when you're thinking about the transition to training, and similar when you think about ScRxipt. And sometimes you're probably doing multiples at once. So please dig into the transitions a little bit and help our viewers understand like what is going on and how you're making the connections and how do those conversations happen?
Yeah, your narrative of that sounds like you were there at every transition.
Same story, different day.
Man. So literally, when I leave my career, that I remember the day. So definitely, kind of the Holy Spirit leading and discernment. I come home, and my wife had known that I had been really toiling throughout the year, like feel like I'm led to leave my career, but I'm like, I'm not sure if this is right timing. And so the day I remember coming home and I looked at her, my wife's name is Robin. She came home and I said, Robin, I'm giving my 2 weeks notice. I'm leaving my career. And she knew that I didn't have anything lined up. And literally, right, this is verbatim, folks are like, no, you're making this up. Like, no, literally in that moment, her immediate response to me was, well, if this is where God is leading you, I trust you. Like, whoa. I didn't expect that. Not that I didn't expect it from her. That's just very aligned with her character. I'm expecting what I heard from the other family members. What are you doing? You got a wife and kids at home. You got a great career. I even was on my way to another promotion at Aurora Healthcare during the time. So I came in Aurora as an intern and moved up the ladder. And so, for lack of a better phrase, I was somewhat of a poster child of success of, early pipeline development and, really developing from within. And literally the CEO of Aurora at that time had selected my boss and myself and wanted us to be kind of what he would consider the gatekeepers of like pipeline development and diversity and things in Aurora Healthcare. And so that was yet another promotion from the CEO of Aurora, and I'm leaving, right? And let's not forget, in that 2008, 2009 period, we had another recession going on, right? The economic downturn. So I'm hearing all of that. I've got the VP of HR who took me out to an Italian restaurant for lunch. And if she had the guts, I think she would have said, "Are you on drugs, Chad?" But she said everything other than that. She's like, like, where are you going? What are you doing? And I'm saying, well, wherever I'm led. I'm not exactly clear, but I just know this is the right thing. And what I looked back and realized was it was less about um, having clarity about what was happening next, but having clarity about really being led by my faith. And it impacted others to say, wow, he's really being led by his values and his compass and his faith. And that impacted a lot of individuals. So spiritually looking back at it, that was really the impact that it needed to have. And so, I've got family members and everyone else outside of my home that's saying, what's going on? Is everything okay? Is Chad going to be bringing in income? And literally for the first 2 years after I left, it was non-income generating. So I went from being the breadwinner in the home with other properties and real estate, plus a good salary. I'm in my 20s. I'm getting closer to six figures, and I leave it, and then don't bring in income constantly for 2 years, right? And so my wife was a teacher at that time, and so her salary was frozen because of the economic downturn. So like everything is happening, right? I'm not bringing in any income, but I'm busier than ever, right? I'm serving, I'm leading in youth ministry and basketball, and serving with a nonprofit organization. They couldn't afford to pay me, but they're like, hey, we could really use your help. And so I'm, operating a nonprofit without any income, helping to clean it up. They had some misappropriation, and it was a faith driven nonprofit. So I'm busy, but I'm not generating income, right? Not what I anticipated in leaving my career. But my wife was right there. I mean, it literally brought us closer together as a family. What could have torn us apart, really, we spent a lot more time together in our family's, foundation and structure. Our faith got stronger. Our union together, as a family, and our marriage, it actually got stronger. We were down to one car for a few years. The engine on one car went out, and I couldn't afford to put an engine in a new car. So I'm driving her to work, the kids to school, and getting to everything that I'm doing that isn't generating income and picking everybody up. I'm just busy. And so you don't anticipate that. But that work ethic was seen by someone who was like, hey, I think we want to provide you an opportunity. And so it's like just really staying the course for me was that lesson of like, hey, just being driven and staying the course and being in position when it's difficult to get out of the bed, when you're like, what am I doing? Like, am I going crazy? Like, I don't have a reason to get out of the bed today. Like, just get up, right? Just keep moving. So it was a transition for me. I mean, mentally, spiritually, physically, financially. Transparently, I'll even share at that time, I even went through a foreclosure, right? So my primary residence, I went through a foreclosure, which was a tough situation to go through. And so you're like, man, what is happening? Got a college degree, I had great credit, had a great salary and income, and I left my career for this? Like, this can't be how it's supposed to be. So it was a very rough transition, but I stayed the course, and in that process, opportunities kept coming my way, right? And so from that transition of leaving corporate America and really being in transition, I really understand now it was a humbling period for me of understanding, really building myself up and understanding I'm not in control, really. I'm really not in control of my destiny, as some would say. I have to be in alignment with it, and I'm a man of faith. And so understanding kind of God lays out the blueprint, and I've got to really just get in the will of it. And so once I really got to that point of understanding the purpose of kind of the pruning process I was going through, then that's when someone came to me and said, hey, what are you doing? That's literally their first question. What are you doing right now? I'm like, well, I'm figuring it out. I had left the company, where I got the RFP and it didn't work out. And they're like, hey, I got an opportunity for you. And I'm like, no, I'm not taking a job. I left my career. They're like, no, 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 no. I've got this opportunity that I really think you should consider. And I didn't respond because I'm thinking, no, I'm not taking a job. Well, since I didn't respond, that person did the next best thing. They called my wife and said, hey, I've got an opportunity for Chad. He really needs to consider it. Just tell him to call me, right? He won't regret it. And so my wife came home and said, give them a call. I gave them a call, and that was my first entry into independent training consulting. Again, didn't know that it existed, but I was at church, and they're like, hey, what are you doing? And, give me a call. got to my wife, and I followed up on it, and that's where my independent training consulting took off. People were really watching my character and my integrity, and me really kind of staying committed and still assisting and benefiting others. And as a result of me being in a position benefiting others and learning along the way, individuals are like, hey, that's someone that I'd like to do business with or want to provide opportunities with. And so, yeah, they were Johnson Controls at the time, and a very narrow window. If I didn't call them right away, I would have missed it, because as soon as I accepted the opportunity, they left within 3 weeks at that company. So they got me in the door and then they left. And so I just look back at that, just like, all in great timing. So training consulting took off from there. And yeah, I mean, from traveling in the US and Canada, I mean, at least a minimum of 2 trips a month, leading 3-day workshops, learning daily rate and invoicing, and, not knowing, like, wow, you can get paid this much per day, to go in and facilitate and train. And like, wow, I didn't know it existed that way. And so, I learned everything from master service agreements and invoicing and daily rates. And you don't get paid right away. Maybe it's a 60-day payment term. Maybe it's a 90-day payment term, right? Navigating all of that. But I had a mentor who was another facilitator who showed me the ropes. I got to travel with her for the first year. And she, showed me everything of how to really put the right language in my contracts and my master service agreements and my statement of work, and how to really increase my daily rate as they change their requests. Like, I didn't know any of that.
How did you get connected with her?
So that person was another independent consultant for Johnson Controls. They formerly worked there, and then they went independent. And so we were co-facilitating some sessions initially, and we really hit it off well, where she ended up just mentoring me and saying, hey, right, do you understand how to do this? I'm like, nope, I'm brand new to all of this. And so, being gracious enough, she really opened up everything and said, what do you need to know? Right. So everything from, like, as I mentioned, from contracts to language, even things of, hey, if they cancel the class, within 30 days, right, you get, 50% of your daily rate. Make sure you put that in there. And, all those different things that she was able to show along the way. And I didn't take that for granted. And so that puts me in a position now where, when you look at someone who's in a position where you can be of assistance to help sharpen them and share information, it doesn't take away from you at all. And so she really laid that roadmap out for me of saying, wow. And I ended up, ironically, getting more trainings than her, where I kind of felt bad, like I came in and started delivering and facilitating and engaging. And so I picked up more trainings and whatnot, but she and I have stayed connected. A lot of the other companies that I've been facilitating it, she ended up being brought on, and I brought her in on some of those opportunities. And so we've looked out for each other along the way. So yeah, that definitely was an interesting journey and a path. It demonstrated a lot for me, integrity and just really giving back, and really being appreciative of building networks of people you can trust. Because we're all learning as we go. I mean, we're not as smart as people would think we are all the time, and we learn a lot of this stuff by trial and error.
Now, you said you got an opening for Stone Creek. The owner of Stone Creek was reaching out. How did that connection facilitate? How did those, because I think that's one of the places where a lot of entrepreneurs can find opportunities. You're just having a conversation with your neighbor or someone you ran into or someone at church, like you mentioned. Those are key opportunities. Walk us a little through how that one came to you.
Yeah, so there was a documentary that was released back in, I believe it was around 2016, the 53206 zip code study. Now, I will share, like, some people are mistakenly mentioning 53206 as the zip code in the United States that has the highest incarceration rate for African American males. And sometimes, like, phrases get out there and people just repeat them. It's a zip code that has a high incarceration rate for African American males, not the highest in the nation. But nevertheless, besides the point, right, there is an issue of Black male incarceration in the United States. So we're not going to shy away from that reality. But they had a documentary that was on the Milwaukee Film Festival, and there were tons of people who were just doing viewings of it. Like, man, people need to see this documentary, 52206. And after you watch those documentaries, many people walk away asking themselves, well, what in the world can I do about that? right? Or what should I be doing about that? And so Eric Resch operates from a samurai Bushido code, right? And so not necessarily aligned, in the same lane as we are with my individual faith, but he operates from a code that says, hey, you've got a responsibility of taking care of community, right? Which is aligned with some of the same values that we operate with. And so after he actually hosted a showing at one of their locations where Stone Creek used to be with Radio Milwaukee, down in that space. They open it up to folks in that community to say, hey, we don't know Central City issues. That's not necessarily where our business footprint is, but we know coffee and we know coffee changes lives. And this could be an opportunity to really create job opportunities for formerly incarcerated individuals, job inhibited individuals, or just community at large. And so individuals that were there didn't really completely understand how they could fit into that. Well, my neighbor happened to be, serving Stone Creek coffee in a cafe that he owned. And so that's how he had that relationship. And he and I were talking at that time. He says, hey, Chad, you're from Milwaukee. I know you're connected here a lot. Here's an opportunity that was presented. Are you interested in being a part of something like that? And I'm like, well, yeah, I'm not the coffee guy, but I'm definitely the, community connector, networker, homegrown here in Milwaukee. I'd love to be a part of something like that, to use coffee that really helps to percolate conversations and opportunities, and said, yeah, I'd love to do so. And so, in collaboration and tutelage under Stone Creek, we started the brand Making Coffee. And instead of roasting coffee, we said, hey, you guys focus on the roasting. That's what you do well. Let us focus on community. Let's take this brand. And so that was even a shift to say, hey, that's what you offered, but we think there's another way that we could really leverage this partnership, where we can focus on what we do well while you focus on what you do well. And in that collaboration, it's worked out very well, where they do the roasting and we do the fulfillment, we do the networking, the community building. We do a lot of the branding for private labels and allowing others to profit from coffee. And also doing job creation with Making Coffee. Now, in a partnership with a student-ran business organization called Rubrics, we have students, high school and college students, that are operating Making Coffee, and they're learning fulfillment. They're doing the invoicing, the finances, the sales, the marketing. They're learning the entire process. So by the time they graduate high school and college, they've learned by doing. And so I'm still on as an advisor, and still helping them understand how to grow the business and, generate revenue. And so it's been a great opportunity for us to really give back and keep the brand alive and moving forward.
Wow, that's spectacular. I want to move now to ScRxipt, and I want to start to dive in, because that's where you spent kind of the last 2 years of your life, yet again transitioning. So you mentioned your mom and your mom's story. How did you go about so that's the problem statement. How'd you go about validating that problem statement and understanding how to implement that? Because we've heard about prescription drug stuff for like as long as you and I have been alive. People have been wrestling with, like, how do you deal with prescription drug costs and those type of things? This is a big issue. How did you get your hands around the problem that you wanted to solve?
Absolutely. And so you kind of start with one-on-one. Actually, I'll go to a real estate phrase. So in real estate development, there's kind of the two sides of the coin. Either you have a use in search of a site, or you have a site in search of a use, right? And so that kind of goes with problem statement with the business, right? Where, you're helping to alleviate, the pain points for individuals when you're seeking to figure out a solution. So my mother's pain point was, wow, for the same medication, I'm paying $20 out of pocket with retiree insurance, and now it's $400 out of pocket for all my medications. It's like, that's crazy. I can't afford that, and I need my medications. And so as I'm thinking about it, I'm like, well, my brother's in Atlanta, and my younger brother and I are still here in Milwaukee with my mother. I'm like, well, we got to step in and help her. Like, but how are we going to do that in a way that's kind of consistent and seamless and easy? And so we started thinking, like, well, what exists out there? So that's where I started. Like, she's got a pain point, she needs help, but how do we do this in a way where it's kind of seamless in the way to assist her? And you're thinking like peer-to-peer payment, right? You got like Cash App and Venmo is what you do. And some people use GoFundMe's and things of that nature to raise funds anytime they're in financial binds. And as I thought about those options, I said, well, those are, possible options to use, but the limitation of those is if I'm giving my mother $400 to $500 a month to help her pay for her medications, like, hey, it's my mother. At the same time, I want to make sure the money is being used on what it's meant to be used for. And if I'm giving it on Cash App, Venmo, GoFundMe, it's the honor system. And I'm not saying we don't honor people's, integrity and, being able to trust them, but it's like, how do you do it in a way where you're saying, hey, this money is there for this specific purpose, so it alleviates your pain point. So your money you can use for whatever else you want, but this is specifically for that reason. And so as I started really engineering the concept in my mind and saying, hey, wouldn't it be great if ScRxipt was kind of like that peer-to-peer payment platform-ish, where you can send money to someone, but funds are restricted. And so that was what I started with. And I said, well, how in the world do you do that? So I started thinking like, hey, well, there's Cash App and Venmo, but I also have what's called a health savings account, right? Where, money is taken pre-tax out of my wife, through her employer. We have a health savings account. So pre-tax dollars are put to the side, and you have a debit card, and those funds are able to be used at specific, locations only for medical, prescription, dental, things of that nature. So I started engineering the concept of saying, wow, well, maybe peer-to-peer payment, kind of health savings accounts. Like, what if this could be, in theory, like a socially funded health savings account where anyone could give to an account to help you save for your out-of-pocket expenses, but the funds are restricted, right? Where trust is built into it. And that took me several months to arrive at that conclusion. How I got there was going with the idea and then getting involved in some accelerators, right? So just because I've got former business experience, doesn't necessarily mean you kind of know everything in every vertical, right? A tax attorney is not a defense attorney, right? For someone on a criminal trial, right? So I went through some accelerators the first one was the blueprint, and it was the idea validation. And they were focused on tech space. I'm not a technical founder, I'm not a technical person, so I'm a non-technical founder. And so going through that helped me get connected with techies, right? To understand how to build wireframes and think about what you've got to do to really build a fintech platform and all the different variables involved. And after going through that initial accelerator, I got connected with some folks. I come from a healthcare background, so connected, back with the healthcare industry. Then, got connected with some fintech platforms and realized fintech is very capital intensive, right? Just to get something launched, whether it's generating revenue or not, it's very capital intensive. So I'm learning you got to have like 1 million and 2 million in capital reserves just to be able to be on some platforms, or have $10 million in transaction volume before you're getting on certain platforms. And I didn't have either. And so you're like, well, how do you get started? How do you have a minimum viable product or an MVP just to get out there and test this thing out? And so, I went through the Blueprint Accelerator, did pitch competitions just to kind of get my idea out there, won some prizes, got on Project Pitch It, got first place in Project Pitch It, so I'm out there just sharing the idea, developing it, sharpening it, and fine tuning it. And then I ended up getting in the inaugural Northwestern Mutual Black Founder Accelerator, collaborative, connection between Northwestern Mutual and Generator. They put $20 million into a fund to say, hey, we want to focus on Black tech startup founders. And so that was an opportunity for me to get connected with some mentors and folks to really guide me into really taking this idea and really getting connected with platforms who can help me get that MVP out there and get it started. And so, yeah, it definitely has been a long journey with a lot of people along the way who, provided great counsel, great, networks and connections. I've met with over 80 plus venture capital firms, which, is overload, but, being a startup that's still pre-revenue, out of the 80 plus that I met with, about 5 were like, you know what, we'd likely consider investing in you. Whereas the other 75 were like, you're a little early for us. Get out there, get some traction. Once you hit a certain, amount of revenue or users, then we'll probably be ready for you in maybe a Series A round. But we think it's a great idea. Go out there and make it happen. So navigating, the space of saying, hey, you got to get it moving first, but you need the capital to get it going first. Well, very capital intensive. What are you going to do? Are you going to put your house, up, your mortgage, and pull in a bunch of other folks to help you invest in it? Like navigating all of that while still building the product and meeting the need has been an interesting journey. But from November of 2019 until now, September of 2021. We've gotten to a point with kind of an MVP, got some physical debit cards for us out to pilot and test right now. My mother was literally just over the last week able to use a ScRxipt card with funds on it and go purchase her medications, right? So it was a bit surreal, exciting for her, for me to hold a ScRxipt card in my hand. It's got the MasterCard logo on it, ScRxipt's logos on it. It worked, with the purchase. I mean, it's just a bit surreal to kind of go from a dream and an idea to an actual tangible card product that's working and it's live and active. So it's been an interesting journey, but well worth it.
Wow, that's an amazing path. Talk to me, a couple of questions that came up for me. One, I would love to hear how, as a non-tech founder, and I've encountered a decent number of entrepreneurs like this, they have an idea, and the first thing they want to do is like, I need a developer. I need to start building this thing out. And what I'm thinking is, I just see money swirling down the toilet bowl because you're not ready to start coding out yet. So
Yeah.
I want to know how you handled it from coding standpoint. And then the second piece that really stood out was, you still figured out how to, you mentioned Series A funding. So, basically we've got bootstrapping, that's us putting in our own money. There's friends and family, that's them putting in some money. There's pre-seed and seed rounds, that's your initial funding to get going, and then you come Series A. So a lot of these folks are saying, Chad, show me that you got something cooking and then come back and talk to me later. But that doesn't help because you got to get something going. So exactly. I also want you to talk about how you rub three nickels together. I'm sure some of these accelerators helped, but hit on those two things because I think they're so important for our viewers today.
Absolutely. Well, I'll start with folks are like, where's the money, right? I'll start with the money first and go back to, the non-technical side. So honestly, as I look back over my journey, everything that I've done has prepared me for this moment, right? I'm clear about that, right? And so the training consulting has been very lucrative and beneficial to me over the years, which put me in a position that I understand not everybody is in, right? It didn't make me a millionaire, but it provided me with at least access to some capital to start, right? And so I was able to have some of my own capital plus the pitch competitions that I went through, and got cash prizes. Some of the initial accelerators that I went through provided, funding. There was more of a business grant. It was a non-dilutive, or it was an equity-free grant. So I, was able to navigate those spaces and try to bootstrap with my own capital and non-equity, non-dilutive funding to help provide initial dollars to then say, okay, well, I know that I'm not a coder, I'm not a technical, founder. So earlier on, I was able to get connected after going to kind of a technical event. I got connected with techies and said, hey, I just need help with, creating, I didn't even know the term wireframe, right, before I started this process. And so I'm like, hey, I need some wireframe. I'm hearing that I need some wireframes that shows, screen by screen on your app, what it could look like and how you want to lay it out. What does it cost to do something like that? I know I'm going to need a landing page on my website because they want to see that you at least have something started. So I was able to find these techies. I got some students, one that wasn't and two that were still in college. They were hungry, looking for opportunities to be a part of something. And they formed the LLC and, they helped me develop wireframes. We did whiteboarding and road mapping. And so that helped me understand the process of developing a technical product. So it was education for me. So I was paying them for not only a deliverable of wireframes, a pitch deck, road mapping, product manual, but they also were educating me indirectly along the way. So I can now sound like I know what I'm talking about. So that was kind of my experience of having the capital to at least pay them on the front end to help me develop it, and then getting some of the other business grants from the accelerators, pitch competitions to help keep things moving forward along the way as we figured it out. So again, my journey kind of has prepared me for this moment. And I learned likewise that, you've got to understand your gaps and your shortcomings. And I went into this knowing I'm not a technical founder. I understand as a user of peer-to-peer payments and apps and, sending funds to individuals, how I'd like it to work. But how to develop it and build it, I didn't understand that. And so I was able to articulate what I wanted and find people who knew how to build it to help me articulate what that roadmap and process would look like. So yeah, that's been my journey. And And where I am now, we're at the point where we're preparing to close on our very first seed round with a venture capital firm. So within days of hopefully signing on closing, gone through, both legal teams looking at it. That's also something else I was able to benefit from going through one of the accelerators. Someone saw my idea and said, "Hey, I think this is a great idea. We know legal expenses can be, very detrimental to your budget earlier on as well." So I ended up applying for a pro bono legal services program, and I got in, and they took care of my IP. So from an intellectual property to even my trademark, we converted. I started off as an LLC and converted to a C corp. They took care of my C corp conversion. So I'm a Wisconsin-based Delaware C corp. I've only been to Delaware one time, but that's a state that tends to be more favorable towards corporations. And so to like all God's timing is how I look at it. I've had the right people at the right time, to help me navigate this process. So yeah, where we are now is a C corp, where we've got a VC firm that's going to invest in us. We've got the term sheet. We're at a point now where we're all agreeing on what the terms say. I'm going through the due diligence now for us to get ready to sign off on that. And then that capital will then put me in position to, now start building and developing it, right? To hire a software development agency and some software engineers to help me build it, and hire some employees to come on board and help me, get out and operate and sell and get things moving. So it's an exciting time right now. It took a while to get here. Under 2 years to some may sound short, but it's been a lot of work. While doing this, I was still doing training consulting and still, being the managing partner for the coffee company. I've since scaled back and now I'm an advisor for the coffee company. And then I actually walked away from my training consulting in April of this year, which was difficult, right? Because that's been how I've generated income for my family, and I've been able to be entrepreneurial with those funds, and it's provided me with capital. But I decided to focus full time on TipaScript since April of this year, and so that's where my attention and focus is primarily.
Wow. Hey, congratulations on being this close to getting that seed funding. We look forward to seeing that announcement when it does come out, and we'll give you some more kudos then. 5 years from now, kind of last question, we'll sort of 5 years from now, what is the brand you want TipaScript to feel? When people hear TipaScript or see your logo or read anything about it, what do you want us to feel and get from TipaScript?
Yeah, I'd love for 5 years from now for that brand of TipaScript to literally be associated with the leading platform for sending funds to individuals to help them cover their out-of-pocket medical and prescription, expenses, right? That's really the expectation. So when you think TipaScript, folks are like, it's pretty much what they call it an eponym, right? So you're like, hey, TipaScript me, right? That's essentially where I'd love it to be, right? Where someone hears that someone's in need with out-of-pocket medical expenses, and we're expanding beyond just prescription meds. That's really the genesis of it. But just like an HSA, you know what? If your grandmother, if your cousin, if your parents, even if your child, as an example, who is an adult, right? But they may need assistance. If you want to be able to send funds to someone that are restricted for the uses that you intended, but whether it be prescriptions, medical bills, medical expenses, dental, senior living expenses for, seniors that you care about. We have the ability to, direct those funds, to restricted areas, right? I want it to be that eponym where that's the first brand you think about when you want to send funds to help people live and be well.
Awesome. Hey, Chad, thanks a lot for joining us. It's been a real treat and a pleasure to be able to learn something of your journey. If people want to get a hold of you, or even maybe they've watched this and they're like, Chad, I want to pile on and continue to help supporting, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn. So I've been on LinkedIn a long time. So I'm just Chad Johnson, or it's LinkedIn.com/I'm Chad Johnson. I am Chad Johnson. So you can find me on LinkedIn. So definitely active out there, willing to connect with individuals. I'd ask that you're not out there spamming and, don't come trying to sell me something out of the gate, right? Let's build organic relationships. It'd be nice to connect and meet you. And then, yeah, you can go to TipaScript.com. TipaScript is spelled TipaScRxipt. right? So I've even got the trademark for the spelling of TipaScript. So yeah, just look us up, Google us, TipaScript, and you can find our website to find out more and connect with us. If you're a healthcare provider, an individual who's interested in learning more about this, we'd definitely love to connect with you. Healthcare providers, pharmaceutical companies, health insurance companies, people at large who want to connect with us. We definitely love sharing more about the journey. And if you think this would be aligned with your mission and what you like to do, we'd love to come on board and see how we can build something with you.
Awesome. Thanks, Chad. And again, this has been our Entrepreneur Encounters interview with Chad Johnson, TipaScript. You can see we got the spelling down there. I personally love the RX. The first time I saw that, I thought that had I knew that he'd gotten the right name there. That was for sure. This interview has been amazing. If you didn't take away at least 5 things, I'm going to draw your mind into 3 that were super key that I heard. 1, listen to those leadings that you're getting. Almost all entrepreneurs have had some type of event, some story, some polling, some compassion, some compelling movement that makes them want to get out and do it. Do listen to those. Those are taking you somewhere and probably moving you where you were created to be. Number 2, get out and network. Don't be afraid to talk to people. And then the last one is, while you're doing that, be a giver. Don't be a taker. I think that's going to make all the difference. If you're interested in continuing to encounter other entrepreneurs and want to continue to build your opportunities to just rub shoulders with people you didn't even know are going to impact the rest of your life, we're still through September 2021 here, and probably into October a little bit too. We're still offering the opportunity free to join other entrepreneurs. It's important to encounter folks. You heard Chad's story. He ran into a lot of people, and that's what has made him successful. It's not the only thing that made him successful, but it's difficult to be successful for not meeting other entrepreneurs. Wednesdays, 4:30 Central. Go ahead and sign up if you're interested. The bit.ly/EntrepreneurEncounters. We would love to have you part of that network, and we'll send you the Zoom link to be able to join us then. I'd be remiss if I don't talk about some of our sponsors today that make this possible. Andrew Feller Photography has done all our photography, both here and on our website. Buckethead Creative handles our graphic arts. Charlie's Music Factory and Chris Crane is going to do the music to take us out here. And then Milwaukee Web Designs has supported us all the way as we built up our web presence. So again, I'm Brent Halfwasson. I'm an entrepreneur coach and business catalyst. It's been a privilege to interview Chad Johnson. If you'd like to be part of our show and you like, please reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can find me at linkedin.com/Brent Halfwasson. Go ahead and direct message me there. If you like some of our interviews, check out some of our other long form interviews we've done before. And also please do subscribe by clicking the EE there. And so with that, we're going to ask Chris to take us out.